The email notification pinged on my screen at 4:27 in the afternoon. The subject line read, "Urgent meeting requested, 9 o'clock tomorrow morning." My stomach knotted as I glanced at the next day's calendar. My promotion hearing was scheduled for 2 o'clock in the afternoon. 5 years of extra hours, brilliant campaign strategies, and client relationships that had increased revenue by 37% would finally pay off. The corner office with the view of the river was practically mine. I replied confirming attendance and continued reviewing my presentation. The promotion to creative director was between me and Natalie. We had started on the same day, but our approaches could not have been more different. While I built relationships with clients and mentored junior team members, Natalie cultivated alliances with upper management. The next morning, I arrived at 8:45, wearing a dark blue suit that projected confidence. When I entered the conference room, 3 people awaited me: Geneva from Human Resources, my direct supervisor Terrence, and Edmund, the division head. "Please sit," Geneva said, her face professionally blank. I lowered myself into the chair, noting how they'd positioned themselves across the table, a united front. "There's been a serious complaint against you," Geneva began, sliding a folder toward me. "According to multiple reports, you've been secretly working for a competitor while employed here." My mind went blank. "What?" "Several team members claim you've been undermining projects to benefit another company," Terrence continued, not meeting my eyes. "Specifically, passing sensitive information to Coastal Strategies." I stared at them. "That's absolutely false. We have testimonies from 3 staff members," Edmund said firmly. "This is extremely serious. This will go on your permanent record." The accusation was so outlandish I almost laughed. Tomorrow was my promotion hearing, and suddenly I was accused of corporate espionage. It wasn't coincidental. "Who made these claims?" I asked, already suspecting. "That's confidential," Geneva replied. I reached into my bag and placed a small wooden box on the table between us. It was palm-sized, made of carved walnut with a tiny brass latch. "Before you file that, you should see this." Geneva glanced at Edmund, who nodded. She opened the box, and confusion crossed her face. Inside was a single silk butterfly, handcrafted, brilliantly blue, with delicate wings spread wide. The room fell silent. "What exactly are we looking at?" Edmund asked. I leaned forward. "That butterfly represents everything you need to know about these accusations." Their eyes locked on me as I took a breath, ready to explain how I'd uncovered something far worse than they could imagine. "Hey there, it's me, Quinn. I know you're probably wondering what that butterfly means and how it connects to these crazy accusations. Trust me, it's about to get intense. If you're enjoying this story already, hit the like button so I know to keep going. Drop a comment with your own workplace nightmare. We've all had them. And if you want to hear more stories like this, subscribe to the channel. Now, let's get back to that meeting room, where 3 people were about to learn they'd made a terrible mistake. My name is Quinn Alder, 32 years old and known around the office for 3 things: my photographic memory, my inability to back down from a challenge, and the small notebooks I always carry. People joke that I document everything, but that habit would ultimately save my career. I joined the company fresh out of graduate school with a master's in strategic communications. My parents, a high school teacher and a nurse, had instilled in me a fierce work ethic and an almost pathological honesty. Growing up in a small apartment where every extra penny went toward my education, I learned the value of both hard work and integrity. The first 2 years at the company were exhilarating. I climbed from junior strategist to team lead by securing major clients and introducing innovative campaign approaches. By year 3, I was managing my own team and had caught the attention of senior leadership. That's when I first crossed paths with Natalie Breyer. Natalie transferred from the West Coast office with glowing recommendations and immediately positioned herself as my competition. Where I built my reputation on results, Natalie built hers on perception. She was brilliant at taking partial credit for successful projects and distancing herself from failures. "Quinn is so detailed-oriented," she'd say in meetings. "Sometimes I worry she gets lost in the minutia while missing the bigger strategic picture." Her subtle undermining was masterful. She'd praise me publicly while planting seeds of doubt about my abilities. Terrence became our supervisor during my 4th year. He had a reputation for playing favorites, and Natalie quickly became his golden employee. They shared lunches, inside jokes, and seemingly had meetings I wasn't invited to. 6 months ago, the creative director position opened up. Both Natalie and I applied. The selection process included client feedback, team evaluations, and a final presentation to the leadership team. I spent weeks preparing my presentation, analyzing 5 years of campaigns, identifying patterns in successful strategies, and developing a 3-year vision for the creative department. 2 weeks before the presentation, strange things started happening. First, a major client called, confused about why we'd suddenly changed direction on their campaign. I never approved those changes, I said, reviewing the materials they'd been sent. Well, someone from your team said you had authorized a complete overhaul, the client replied. Then documents began disappearing from my digital folders. My presentation draft vanished, requiring me to rebuild it from an older version. Team members mentioned receiving conflicting instructions from me, instructions I never gave. Quinn told me to prioritize the tourism account, a junior designer said when questioned about missed deadlines on our financial client's project. I never said that, I countered, but the damage was done. The pattern was clear. Someone was systematically undermining my work and reputation. Initially, I suspected Natalie, but the sabotage seemed too widespread for one person. 3 days before these accusations, I stayed late to finalize my presentation. The office was nearly empty when I realized I'd left my notebook in the conference room. As I approached, I heard voices, Terrence and Natalie. It's handled, Terrence was saying. Quinn won't be a problem after Friday. You're sure it'll work? Natalie asked. She's resourceful. Trust me, Terrence replied. The evidence is convincing. By this time next week, you'll be moving into the director's office. I froze, heart pounding. They were planning something to discredit me before my promotion hearing. Instead of confronting them, I retreated silently. If they were creating evidence against me, I needed to understand what it was before defending myself. The next morning, I arrived early and connected a small recording device under my desk. I wasn't sure what I was looking for, but I needed protection. I also began carefully tracking every communication, every file access, and every meeting. That evening, reviewing the day's recording, I heard someone enter my office while I was in a client meeting. The sounds were unmistakable, drawers opening, papers shuffling, keyboard clicking. When I checked my computer logs, someone had accessed my email and sent messages to a Gmail address I didn't recognize. The subject line, weekly update on campaign metrics. That's when I understood. They weren't just trying to sabotage my promotion. They were framing me for corporate espionage. I needed to act quickly. The accusation meeting was clearly their trap, but they hadn't expected me to bring that butterfly. What they didn't know was that small blue butterfly represented months of meticulous counterintelligence that was about to expose something far bigger than a promotion rivalry. The butterfly, I said to the 3 people staring at me across the table, was a gift from my grandmother. She taught me that butterflies don't fight predators directly. They create illusions that reveal the truth. I reached back into my bag and pulled out a black notebook. 2 months ago, I noticed something strange. Our bid numbers were appearing in competitors' proposals, not leaked by me, but by someone with executive access. Edmund leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. That's a serious accusation, which is exactly why I needed irrefutable proof, I replied, opening the notebook. What you're about to see will change everything about this company. Are you ready to see the truth behind the illusion? I opened the notebook to reveal meticulously documented entries, dates, times, and detailed observations spanning months. When I first noticed our proprietary strategy frameworks appearing in competitor presentations, I thought it might be coincidence, I explained. But after the third occurrence, I knew someone was leaking information. Geneva shifted uncomfortably. And you didn't report this? To whom? I asked pointedly. The pattern suggested the leak came from upper management. I turned to a marked page. I created a system. Each time I submitted reports or strategies to different executives, I embedded unique identifiers, subtle language variations, specific metrics rounded differently, distinctive phrasing that wouldn't be noticed unless you were looking for them. Edmund's eyes widened slightly. You watermarked confidential documents? I tagged them. I corrected. And when our competitors mysteriously echoed these unique markers, I could trace exactly which version they'd seen and who had access to that version. I placed 5 printed presentations on the table, each highlighted with different colored markers. Yellow highlights show markers only present in Terrence's copies. Green indicates Edmund's versions. Blue represents the CEO's documents. Red shows markers in board materials. I pointed to a competitor's presentation that had been leaked to me by an industry contact who thought something seemed off. Notice the yellow highlights appearing in their materials, consistently, across multiple presentations. The leak wasn't coming from my team. It was coming from Terrence's copies. The room went silent. Terrence's face flushed dark red. "This is absurd," he stammered. "You've fabricated this entire thing." "The butterfly pattern never lies," I said quietly. But that's not all I found. I produced a second notebook. When I realized what was happening, I started tracking more carefully. Communication patterns, meeting schedules, financial records. I slid the notebook toward Geneva. 2 weeks after every major client signing, Terrence receives a deposit into an offshore account. The amounts correlate to approximately 3% of each deal's value. "You've been spying on my personal finances?" Terrence shot to his feet. "That's illegal." "Actually, these are public records from a lawsuit involving your divorce," I clarified. "Your ex-wife's attorney submitted them as evidence of hidden assets. They're readily available in court documents." Edmund turned to Terrence, his expression hardening. "You've been selling our information?" "She's making this up," Terrence shouted. "This is a desperate attempt to save her job." "If I'm making it up," I countered calmly, "then how do I know about your meetings with Zach Palmer from Coastal Strategies?" "The same meetings you've been having twice monthly at the Riverside Cafe, always between 6:30 and 7:15 a.m.? His face drained of color. "Or the fact that 3 days ago, you and Natalie met in conference room B where you said, and I quote, 'Quinn won't be a problem after Friday,' and promised Natalie the director position? You were eavesdropping?" He sputtered. "I overheard you accidentally. But after that, I started recording conversations in my own office. I pulled out a small device from my pocket, which is how I know someone entered my office during client meetings, accessed my computer, and sent emails to create the appearance I was sharing information with competitors." I turned to Geneva. "That's what these accusations are about." Terrence needed to discredit me before I discovered what he was doing. And he used Natalie to help create a false narrative. Edmund's jaw tightened. "These are extraordinary claims, with extraordinary evidence," I replied, pulling out a flash drive. "This contains all the documentation, the tagged documents, the pattern of leaks, the email logs showing access to my account when I was in client meetings that Terrence himself scheduled." Geneva took the drive hesitantly. "If this is true?" "It gets worse," I interrupted. Natalie wasn't Terrence's first accomplice. Over the past 2 years, 5 women in senior positions were pushed out after similar misconduct accusations. All were competing for promotions against candidates Terrence favored. I placed printed HR records on the table, records I'd quietly gathered from sympathetic colleagues in human resources who had also noticed the pattern. Amira Chen, Destiny Williams, Josephine Rodriguez, Krista Parks, and Ella Thompson, all accused of ethical violations right before promotion decisions, all pushed out, all replaced by people who now report directly to Terrence, expanding his influence throughout the company. Edmund looked stricken. "This is systemic. It's strategic," I corrected, "and it's been happening under everyone's noses." Terrence lunged across the table, grabbing for my notebooks. "You manipulative little." Edmund caught his arm. "Sit down, Terrence. You're believing her?" he snarled. "I've been with this company for 15 years, which is exactly why no one questioned you," I said softly. "You used your position to eliminate threats and consolidate power. You cultivated allies who would echo your accusations without question. You built a system where your word was never doubted." Geneva was scrolling through files on the flash drive, her expression growing more disturbed with each click. "Edmund, you need to see this." The door suddenly opened, and Natalie appeared, her confident smile faltering when she saw the array of documents spread across the table. "I was told you needed me for." Her voice trailed off as she registered the tension in the room. "Perfect timing," I said. "We were just discussing your role in falsifying evidence against me." Her eyes darted to Terrence, seeking guidance. "Don't look at him," Edmund said sharply. "Look at these." He pushed the highlighted competitor presentations toward her. "Did you know about this?" Natalie's perfectly composed facade cracked slightly. "I don't know what those are." "They're proof that Terrence has been selling company information to competitors," Geneva said. "And evidence suggests he enlisted your help to frame Quinn." "That's ridiculous," she said automatically, but her voice lacked conviction. I turned to face her directly. "Natalie, I know you want that promotion. I understand ambition. But did you know about the other women? Did you know you weren't the first person he used to push someone out?" A flicker of confusion crossed her face. "What other women?" "The 5 before me," I said quietly. "All accused of misconduct they didn't commit. all replaced by people loyal to Terrence. Natalie's gaze shifted to the HR records, then back to Terrence. Something changed in her expression, a dawning realization. "You told me Quinn was actually guilty," she said slowly. "You said there was already evidence, and you just needed my testimony to strengthen the case." "He lied," I said, "just like he's been lying to everyone. And once I was gone, how long before you became inconvenient too? Before someone else caught his eye as a useful ally? What would he fabricate about you then?" The color drained from Natalie's face as the implications sank in. "I didn't know," she whispered. "I swear I didn't know about any leaks or—" "Shut up," Terrence snapped. "Don't say another word." "Actually," Edmund interjected, "I think Natalie should say quite a bit more. In fact, I think we need to continue this conversation with legal present." He turned to Geneva. "Call security to escort Terrence to the waiting area. He's not to touch any devices or contact anyone. Then get Angela from legal up here immediately." Terrence stood, his face contorted with rage. "This is a setup. Quinn has manipulated all of you." "The butterfly doesn't manipulate," I said calmly. "It simply reveals patterns that were already there." As security arrived to escort Terrence out, Edmund turned to me. "I owe you an apology, and I have many questions about how long you've known and why you approached it this way." "I needed irrefutable evidence," I explained. "Accusations against someone in Terrence's position wouldn't be believed without it. And I needed to understand how deep the problem went. Deep enough that we'll be dealing with the fallout for months," Geneva murmured, still scrolling through files. Natalie remained standing by the door, looking lost. "What happens now?" Edmund's expression was grim. "That depends on your level of involvement. If you knowingly participated in corporate espionage, the consequences will be severe. If you were manipulated and can provide testimony about how Terrence operated, that's a different conversation." She swallowed hard. "I didn't know about any information selling. He just told me Quinn was undermining the company and asked me to report things I'd noticed about her behavior." "And you didn't question that?" I asked. "He's a senior executive," she said weakly. "Why would he lie?" The door opened again as Angela from legal entered, briefcase in hand. "I understand we have a situation. That's putting it mildly," Edmund replied. "We appear to have uncovered systematic corporate espionage, fraud, and falsification of evidence against employees." As Angela was briefed on the situation, I sat quietly, watching their reactions. The butterfly box remained open on the table, its blue silk wings catching the light. My grandmother's voice echoed in my mind. "The smallest creatures often have the most effective defenses." Hours later, as I left the building, my phone buzzed with a message from Edmund. "Promotion hearing postponed. Terrence suspended pending investigation. Need to speak with you tomorrow about next steps." I texted back a simple, "I'll be there," and headed home. That night, I called Amira Chen, the first woman Terrence had pushed out. She answered on the second ring. "It's Quinn Alder," I said. "We need to talk. It's about Terrence Harlow and what he did to you." Her sharp intake of breath was audible. "After 2 years, why bring this up now?" "Because I've found the pattern," I replied. "And I think it's time we all compared notes." "All?" she asked cautiously. "There are 5 of you, plus me, 6 women whose careers he tried to destroy." The line went quiet for a moment. Then Amira spoke, her voice gaining strength with each word. "Tell me exactly what you need." I smiled into the phone. "I need you to help me finish what the butterfly started." The call with Amira stretched past midnight. Her story mirrored mine with eerie precision. The sudden accusations, the evidence that appeared from nowhere, the witnesses who claimed to have seen things that never happened. By the time we hung up, she had agreed to contact Destiny Williams, while I reached out to Josephine Rodriguez. Within 48 hours, all 6 of us had connected. We created a secure group chat and began sharing our experiences. Each woman's story revealed another piece of Terrence's methodology: how he identified targets, cultivated allies, fabricated evidence, and systematically removed anyone he couldn't control. "He waits until you're about to succeed," Krista explained during our first video call. "My accusation came 3 days before I was supposed to present a new client strategy that would have doubled my department's revenue." "Same pattern," Ella nodded. "He strikes when you're most visible. When pushing you out will create the biggest cautionary tale for others." Josephine, who had left the company 8 months ago, leaned closer to her camera. "The question is, what do we do with this information? Quinn still works there. The rest of us have moved on." "Have we?" Destiny challenged. "I took a position with less responsibility and lower pay because my reputation was damaged. I'm still rebuilding what he took from me." I listened to these brilliant women describe how Terrence had derailed their careers, studying their expressions as anger gave way to determination. They weren't broken, just redirected, like water finding new channels after a dam is built. I have a proposal, I said finally, but it requires commitment from all of us. The next morning, I met with Edmund and Angela in the CEO's office. Victor Porter, the CEO, was a tall man with thoughtful eyes who listened carefully as I outlined what I had discovered. This pattern of behavior represents more than just Terrence's misconduct, I explained. It reveals structural weaknesses in how the company handles accusations, evaluates evidence, and protects employees from retaliation. We're taking immediate action against Terrence, Victor assured me. His employment has been terminated, and we're investigating every promotion decision he influenced. That addresses the symptom, not the disease, I replied. What about the culture that allowed him to operate undetected for years? What about the executives who accepted his recommendations without question? What about the HR processes that failed to recognize the pattern? Victor leaned back, studying me. You've given this considerable thought. I've had considerable motivation, I countered. What are you proposing? Edmund asked. I placed a document on the table. This is a comprehensive reform plan developed with input from the 5 other women Terrence pushed out. It includes new accountability structures, independent review boards for misconduct allegations, and anonymous reporting systems with real protections. Angela skimmed the document, her eyebrows rising. This is extremely thorough. There's more, I continued. We want independent auditing of all promotion decisions from the past 5 years, with adjustments made where bias is identified. We want compensation for career disruption for the women who were pushed out, and we want a public acknowledgement of the systematic failures that allowed this to happen. Victor's expression tightened. That's asking a lot. Actually, I said calmly, it's the minimum required to avoid the alternative. Which is? Edmund asked cautiously. A joint lawsuit from 6 women with documented evidence of systematic discrimination, fraud, and corporate negligence, along with press coverage detailing how the company's leadership enabled Terrence's behavior for years. The room went silent. You're threatening us, Victor said finally. I'm offering you a choice, I corrected. Address these issues privately and thoroughly now, or address them publicly and painfully later. Quinn, Edmund began, his tone conciliatory. I'm not finished, I interrupted. There's one more thing, the Butterfly Initiative. The what? Victor asked. I handed him another document, a new company division focused on ethical business practices and workplace culture, headed by the 6 women who experienced Terrence's tactics firsthand. We know exactly where the vulnerabilities are because we lived them. You want us to create an entire division for you? Angela asked incredulously. We want you to invest in fixing what's broken, I clarified, with the people who understand the breakage best. Victor thumbed through the proposal. This would require significant resources. Consider the cost of not doing it, I replied. Continued talent loss, potential legal exposure, reputation damage. I need time to review this, Victor said. Of course, I agreed. You have until Monday. His head snapped up. 3 days? 3 days, I confirmed. The others are waiting for my signal. If we don't have a preliminary agreement by Monday, we move forward with the lawsuit and media strategy. That's not how this works, Victor said, his voice hardening. You don't dictate terms to this company. Actually, I smiled slightly. That's exactly how this works. Because while you've been focusing on Terrence, you haven't asked the most important question. Which is, Edmund asked, how deep does this go? How many other executives were aware of or benefited from Terrence's methods? How many promotion decisions throughout the company were influenced by similar tactics? I leaned forward. Because we've been comparing notes, and we have names, multiple names. Victor paled slightly. You're bluffing. I opened my phone and showed him a document with highlighted names, dates, and incidents. Am I? The weekend passed in tense anticipation. The other women and I continued building our case, reaching out to additional employees who had experienced similar treatment. By Sunday night, our evidence file had doubled in size, and 4 more women had joined our coalition. Monday morning, my phone rang at 7:15 a.m. It was Victor. We need to talk, he said tersely. My office, 8 a.m. When I arrived, the executive leadership team was assembled around the conference table, along with representatives from legal and HR. A stack of documents sat before each person. Victor gestured for me to sit. We've reviewed your proposals. I waited, my face neutral. They're ambitious, he continued, possibly unrealistic in their current form. yet necessary, I replied. Angela cleared her throat. We've prepared a counter-proposal that addresses many of your concerns while maintaining operational feasibility. I accepted the document she slid toward me, scanning its contents. Most of our core demands remained intact, with adjustments to implementation timelines and resource allocations. This is a starting point, Victor said. We're prepared to negotiate in good faith. Good faith would have been nice 2 years ago when Amira was being escorted from the building, I observed, but I'll take it now. Over the next 3 hours, we hammered out a preliminary agreement. The company would establish an independent review board for all misconduct allegations, conduct a thorough audit of promotion practices, and provide compensation to the women affected by Terrence's actions. Most significantly, they agreed to create the Butterfly Initiative, a new division focused on ethical workplace practices, with Amira as its director, and the rest of us serving as founding members. One more thing, I said as the meeting concluded. Natalie, what about her? Edmund asked. She was manipulated by Terrence, but she made choices. She needs accountability, but also a path forward. I want her assigned to the Butterfly Initiative for 6 months. Let her learn from the women she almost joined in exile. Victor considered this. That's unusually merciful. It's strategic, I corrected. Rehabilitation is more valuable than punishment. She has potential if it's directed properly. 2 weeks later, I stood in a renovated office space, watching as Amira directed the placement of desks and equipment. Josephine was on a video call with HR, discussing new reporting protocols. Krista and Ella were reviewing applications from employees interested in joining the initiative. Destiny was sketching a logo, a blue butterfly emerging from darkness. Natalie entered hesitantly, carrying a small box of personal items. Her confident stride had diminished, but there was something more authentic in her manner now. Where should I set up? She asked quietly. Amira pointed to a desk near hers. You'll work directly with me for the first month. I want you involved in developing the anonymous reporting system. Natalie nodded, her expression solemn. Thank you for this opportunity. I know I don't deserve it. This isn't about deserving, I told her. It's about becoming. As she settled in, Edmund appeared in the doorway. The board approved the full budget this morning, he announced. The Butterfly Initiative is officially activated. A cheer went up around the room. Amira caught my eye and smiled. Not bad for 6 women who were supposed to disappear quietly. I reached into my bag and placed the small wooden box on my new desk, opening it to reveal the silk butterfly. In the sunlight streaming through the windows, its blue wings seemed almost alive. The butterfly doesn't fight the predator, I said, echoing my grandmother's wisdom. It creates illusions that reveal the truth. And sometimes, Amira added, it transforms the entire ecosystem. That evening, I called my grandmother to tell her how her gift had changed everything. I'm not surprised, she said, her voice warm with pride. You always understood the power of patience. Revenge that destroys only creates more destruction. Revenge that transforms, that's revolution. 6 months later, our initiative had implemented company-wide changes that increased retention rates by 17% and improved internal promotion equity by 23%. 3 other companies had approached us about implementing similar programs in their organizations. Terrence, meanwhile, had become unhireable in the industry. His attempts to minimize his actions had been undermined by thorough documentation that followed him to every interview. The last I heard, he was selling real estate in a small coastal town, far from the corporate world he once dominated. The ultimate revenge wasn't his downfall, though. It was the transformation of the system that enabled him. A transformation that turned his tactics into case studies on what not to do and elevated his victims into leaders of change. And that blue silk butterfly? It sits on my desk even now, a reminder that sometimes the most powerful response to predatory behavior isn't to fight directly, but to create something new from the experience. Hey, if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and share it with someone who's facing their own workplace challenges. Have you ever stood up to someone who abused their power? Or maybe you've witnessed it happening? Drop a comment below with your story. Sometimes sharing these experiences helps others realize they're not alone. Subscribe if you want more stories about justice, transformation, and the quiet power of those who refuse to be silenced. Thanks for listening to Quinn's journey. Remember, every butterfly was once a caterpillar that endured darkness before spreading its wings.